The horrors of war have always generated powerful visual images, but nowadays they reach a much wider audience. Visual images of war crimes are important both in swaying public opinion and in war crimes prosecutions and trials. So what influence do these images have in getting trials and tribunals set up in the first place, during those trials, and in ensuring a sense of peace and justice afterwards? A team from King's College London has been investigating these matters. Their research included talking to focus groups from different communities in former Yugoslavia and elsewhere.
In terms of the Yugoslavia tribunal, one of the first things we thought about was the impact of a bit of film, the footage of the Scorpions unit taking part in killing people as part of what are known as the Srebrenica massacre genocide action. When this was shown in the courtroom, it had far greater effect than anything else. Everybody knows about it, we found. It's shown everywhere, and it really is recognized as having an important transformative impact in Serbia. Serbia went from a position of complete denial to people admitting that their side really must have done some of these things, and it paved the way for elements of cooperation in Serbia and for the activity of the Serbian War Crimes Court itself. We found that while the courtroom is a very visual environment, actually the attempts at transparency and transmitting this to people had very little impact.
The images of the courtroom was something that people felt was very, they were very removed from them. They felt they were very alienating. The layout of the courtroom, the different glass panels, the way people were sitting different, and as a lot of people said, quite a few people came up with the same things, was, oh, it's just a bunch of men in suits. And some people found it particularly disturbing that there was a kind of, there was politeness, but even to a certain degree, sycophancy towards the accused. And they felt, you know, if you were a victim, you certainly wouldn't want the accused to be treated with this, almost subservient kind of attitude, and people smiling and being polite towards them.
What we've seen is that even though people find the coverage of trials slow, dull, distant, and off-putting, there are moments where particular images break out and cut through everything else, and they become familiar in most places. And this is important information if we want to take it away, because those working with tribunals, those thinking about wider missions of peace and security in judicial bodies, in governments, need to understand that if they're going to have effect, if they're going to make a difference in terms of peace and justice, then it's using outreach and using images with outreach that is going to be most successful.
The International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia itself has an outreach program, and it makes extensive use of visual material to change hearts and minds beyond the courtroom.
Victims testifying, so for example, a female victim of rape or sexual violence testifying in a courtroom brings the story much more to life. And very often in my work with the communities in the former Yugoslavia, I play snippets of this evidence where the woman tells how this affected her life. And I don't tell the people I'm speaking to whether this woman is a Serb, a Croat or Muslim, for example, especially if I'm speaking to those who are deniers. And then I ask them, after we spoke about the denial, and say, do you really think it matters? Can you tell me, is this woman Serb, Croat or Muslim by her story? Because each one of them suffers more or less the same pain and the same trauma from the act that was made upon her. And it does actually make people think much more about the individual's suffering in the war rather than groupations and nations and religions, etc.
The images of Mrs. Tajic asking the accused whether he knew what had happened to her two sons are perhaps the most powerful of everything that we have, and the most people were affected by them. And it's in this courtroom where she finally gets the answer from the person responsible that both her sons are dead. He tells her where they were killed, when they were killed, which is what she'd feared and what she'd suspected. But until that second, she always had some hope, however unrealistic, that it might not be true. And having it confirmed in court like that struck some people as almost, some people said, well, it's catharsis, it's a good thing, she's finally got the news that she was dreading, but at least she knows, and she can then deal with it somehow. Other people said this just added further injury, further insult to injury, made the situation even worse because it's done in a public arena.
Visual material is enormously important at all of the three stages we identified, and particularly in terms of its impact beyond the courtroom. And that's perhaps not so much that we expected in the first place, but that's the area in which real development is possible, and that's the thing that I think people more broadly need to take on board.